What's up, good people? Welcome to the MMA Mashup. I am your host, Tony Robinson. Um, Welcome to the very first edition of MMA Mashup. With UFC 298 coming up, I figured I would give you guys my predictions about who's going to win the fights, how the fights are going to go, and then their next step after the fight. Um, and then after we get through the predictions and all that good stuff, we'll get into some other MMA things that are going on. So let's start with the early prelims of UFC 298. The very first fight is a banger, in my opinion. You got number 15, Andrea Lee, taking on Miranda Maverick in the women's flyweight division. Currently, Miranda Maverick is a minus 185 favorite. And honestly, that's exactly how I see this fight going. Miranda Maverick knows this is a huge opportunity for her to crack into the top 15. Andrea Lee is a good fighter, a solid fighter. But Miranda Maverick, with all the potential, I just think that coming up tomorrow, she's just going to be in just a different stratosphere. I don't see this fight lasting long. I don't really care where Andrea Lee wants to take it, whether she wants to do stand up, to the ground, clinch. I just think Miranda Maverick's going to be game and ready for whatever gets thrown at her. I can see this ending in the second round by TKO, and Miranda Maverick getting her hand raised and going on, securing that top 15 ranking, and then going to fight somebody in the top 10 and maybe staking her claim at a title run later this year. So that's my prediction for that fight. I got Miranda Maverick, second round TKO over Andrea Lee, and her solidifying her spot in the top 15. All right, we're not going to spend too much time on the early prelims just because a lot of people aren't going to tune in anyway. I'm going to tune in, but a lot of people aren't going to tune in, so we're not going to spend a bunch of time. So the next fight, we're looking at Oban Elliott, which he's become one of my favorite fighters, one of my favorite personalities. Really funny guy. Versus Val Woodburn in the welterweight division. Currently, Oban Elliott is a minus 325 favorite over Val Woodburn. The last time we saw Val Woodburn, it was not good for what it's worth. The UFC did kind of throw him to the wolves with Bo Nickel on a main card. You know what I mean? So give or take what you saw there, but I do see Oban Elliott getting it done. I do see that happening. I would like to see Val Woodburn put out a much more competitive fight this time. I do see this fight going all 3 rounds to a judge's decision, but a UD for Oban Elliott in the end. And then I look forward to seeing Oban Elliott start to look for higher fights against a little bit more credentialed fighters, so he can start to work his way up and maybe get into the top 15 before the end of the year. Going to the prelims now. So that's the last fight on the early prelims. You got Andrea Lee versus Miranda Maverick, and then you had Oban Elliott versus Val Woodburn. All right, so we're moving on to the prelims now, starting off with a banger. I mean, a banger. To start off, we got Josh Quinlan versus Danny Barlow in the welterweight division. Danny Barlow is a current minus 205 favorite to get it done against Josh Quinlan. In my opinion, I would probably have to take Danny Barlow on this one, and I don't see Josh Quinlan giving him much of a fight. I could see that being a early stoppage, a first round KO for Danny Barlow. He's always been very impressive when he comes out, and I just as good and as much as a veteran as Josh Quinlan is, the younger guys that are coming out of the welterweight division right now are just on fire. So I would take Danny Barlow over Josh Quinlan currently. So we're moving on to the next fight, much closer in odds. You got Zhang Ming Yang versus Brendan Ribeiro. Sorry if I butchered your names, not the best. But this is in the light heavyweight bout. This is a light heavyweight bout, and currently Zhang Mingyang is a negative 122 favorite, and Bretson Ribeiro is a plus 102 underdog. I'm going to be honest, don't really know too much about these two guys, but me personally, if I was going to be betting, I would put my money on Brinson. Good money line. I imagine that he can get it done against this guy. I don't know if it'll be a 1 or 2 round fight. I'm pretty sure it'll go to the decision, and I would give the edge to Brinson Ribeiro. That's what I would do. All right, moving on to the next bout, which is in the bantamweight division. You got Rinya Nakamura. Heard a lot about this guy, a whole lot about this guy. I've also seen him fight a couple times, and he's been very impressive in his outings. But he's going up against Carlos Vera, another veteran in the UFC. Currently, right now, Rinya Nakamura is a minus 1350 favorite. Don't be silly. Don't take the other guy. Just go with Rinya Nakamura. And I do see that one being ended first round TKO. I just think Rinya's forward pressure, this sick amount of confidence that he has when he goes into these fights, he's never going to take a step back, especially not against a guy like Carlos Vera. He's going to continue to be in his face the entire time for the whole 15 minutes if it gets that far. I just the power in Rinya, I just see it. I don't see it going well for Carlos Vera. I imagine this will be a quick one. Excuse me. Be a quick one. Either first round KO or a second round KO. Regardless, though, Rinya Nakamura will get it done. And then I expect him to start also looking for top 15 fights in bantamweight, especially with the new champion, Sean O'Malley. I think that it's time for some new blood, and Rinya Nakamura is definitely starting to climb up that ladder. So headed to the next fight, we're looking at now. This is the featured prelim. This is the one that's going to be on ESPN. You got number 3 Amanda Lemos versus number 7 Mackenzie Dern in the women's strawweight division. Now, my heart is saying Mackenzie Dern. Huge Mackenzie Dern fan. My brain is saying Amanda Lemos. Now, me personally, I'm gonna go with Mackenzie Dern. If Mackenzie Dern can use her wrestling and use her jiu-jitsu, she can get it done. But what she can't do is what she did in her last outing, which is try to go pound for pound boxing with a striker. It's not in her best interest to do that. So if the fight goes to the ground, I obviously have Mackenzie Dern winning it. If the fight stays standing up, I gotta go with my brain, and that's Amanda Lemos. Currently, Amanda is a minus 135 favorite. Mackenzie Dern's a plus 114 dog. For betting purposes, right here, I would probably go with Amanda Lemos, just because every fight starts standing up. So if Mackenzie Dern can't close distance, get clinched, use her jiu-jitsu, her throws, her judo to get Amanda Lemos down and then actually do something with the position, I just don't I don't think it goes well for her if she does not get her down to the ground. So I would say if you're betting, go with Amanda Lemos. If you're just here to watch fights and just bet with your friends, I would say go Mackenzie Dern. All right, and now that is the end of the prelims. We're going into the main card. The main card for UFC 298 is stacked. I mean stacked. Starting with a banger off the rip. If you have not seen either one of these guys fight, you are in for a treat. A banger off the rip in the middleweight division. You got Anthony Hernandez, who is number 15 ranked, just cracked the top 15 not too long ago, going up against Roman Kopylov. Roman Kopylov. I mean, there's nothing bad I can say about that guy. Impeccable defense, great stand up, great wrestling, great jiu-jitsu, good in the clinch. He's one of those guys that really is a complete MMA fighter. And then on the other hand, you have another really, really, really complete MMA fighter, Anthony Hernandez. Guy comes out in his last fight and just submits a guy just like that. I mean, just like that, and gets himself into the top 15. Um, I see this fight going a couple ways, right? So this is where things kind of get interesting for me. Anthony Hernandez is currently a minus 245 favorite. And with his previous outings, it makes sense for him to be a favorite. Um, but Roman Kopylov is currently a plus 200 dog. And with what I've seen from Roman Kopylov, the cardio, the IQ, the forward pressure, the it's just something about his style that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable betting on him than I would Anthony Hernandez. Now, what I will say is Anthony Hernandez is very, very, very slick when it comes to the ground game, when it comes to submissions. So Roman Kopylov will have to look out for that. But I feel like me personally, my choice right now is Roman Kopylov. After what he did in his last performance, I'm giving the edge currently to Roman Kopylov. So if you're betting and you want to make some money, and that's like a it's not a for sure bet, but like it could be a big winner for you at the end of the night. So I would go with Roman Kopylov in this bout. It's his chance to crack into the top 15, so you know he's going to give his best shot when he comes out there. Yeah, so I'm going to go Roman Kopylov. I'm not going to give you the prediction of how. And the only reason I'm not going to do that is because I have no idea. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea. This is a really good one. It's going to be a bar burner. Can't wait for it. Going on to a bout that I thought should have been the co-main event for this card. But I digress. Number 2, Merab Dvalishvili going up against number 3 ranked Henry Cejudo in the bantamweight division. Excuse me. So, there's a few ways of breaking this fight down. The last time we saw Merab, we saw him shoot 50, 60, 70 times against Piotr Yan and get it done. Former champ Piotr Yan not only got outskilled, out wrestled, but out cardioed by Merab, the monster, machine, the guy, And I think that Henry Cejudo, as good as I'm not going to say was, because I think that he is still very, very good. But I just think that there comes a time when the sport of MMA kind of passes you on, right? So as good as Henry Cejudo was, the double champ, Triple C, I just think that it might be time for him to hang it up, because if he loses this fight, there's no way back to the belt, right? So he lost to Aljamain Sterling. And as competitive as that fight was, I think some people saw it a lot more competitive than I did. But with that loss to Aljamain Sterling, coming back and then losing to a guy like Merab is just, it's one of those things that puts you down in the rankings. And then they're going to expect him to fight even younger guys, young and upcoming guys. So I look at this fight like a kind of a going away party for Henry. Merab is a machine, man. He's going to. I talked a lot about forward pressure with Miranda Maverick and others, but like the pressure that Merab is going to put on Henry, it's just going to be a different type of forward pressure, a different style of wrestling. Like Merab has this thing where most guys look like they're going to break at least one time in the fight, at least once, regardless of who it is, if it goes the distance, that a fighter tends to get a look of like, okay, I might have had enough. But I've never seen that from a Rob. I've never seen it from a Rob. The constant pressure. I mean, just shooting takedowns, throwing punches, flying knee, shoot a takedown, and it's nonstop. And he just does not get tired. Merab is a minus 238 favorite over Henry Cejudo currently. Henry Cejudo is a plus 195. Um, I don't, as good as Henry is and as good as Triple C was, Marab's on a different planet right now. He should be the one fighting next month for the title against Sean O'Malley, but I digress. I see us going the full 15, but I see Henry being tired after the first round, and he's going to have to deal with the fact that Marab is not going to stop coming at him. So if I was a betting man, I would take my bets on Marab. My bet would be on Marab. I think that it's his time. I think that after he gets this done against Henry, that he will go ahead and fight Sean O'Malley, the winner of Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto. Um, and honestly, I see him being the UFC bantamweight champion by the end of the year. So my choice, obviously for this fight is going to be Merab Dvalishvili. If you see me looking up, I got the UFC weigh-in show currently on the television, so I'm kind of doing a little bit of both. I also got all the info on the card here on my laptop here. So um, headed to the next fight. The next fight is a good one. This was a fight that was scheduled already that ended up having to be canceled due to pneumonia being caught by Ian Machado Gary. But this is number 8, Jeff Neal, going up against Ian Machado Gary, number 10 in the welterweight division. Right now, Ian Machado Gary is a minus 238 favorite against Jeff Neal, who is a plus 195 dog. The last time we saw Jeff Neal, he put on a hell of a fight. I mean, a hell of a fight versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Nearly gave Shavkat his first loss. So I think that with all the things that happened prior to the first fight between Jeff and Ian being canceled, I think that Jeff is going to come into this with a lot more motivation with the whole, Ian putting his mugshot on the t-shirt and wearing it out and doing all this clown shit. Um, I think that Jeff's going to come out a little bit more motivated. With that being said, Ian Machado Gary has just as much motivation with all the stuff that's been going on with his name in the media with his wife and Sean Strickland and all these guys speaking poorly on him and his family. So I also know that he's going to come out with a little bit extra motivation as well. So I would, me personally, I would love to see Jeff Neal go out there and put Ian to sleep. I would love to see that personally. I think Ian's mouth is way too big for his skills. I don't think his skills are that great. But he is undefeated, so we will see. Um, me personally, on this fight, I'm going to go with Ian Machado Gary just because of all the stuff that's been happening over the past few months. I know he's going to come out there and want to make a statement so that you guys forget about all that and only remember what he does on Saturday night. So I could see this one going probably maximum 2 rounds, whether it be Jeff Hansen Steel getting it done, knocking him out, or Ian Machado Gary knocking Jeff out. But if I was gonna bet on this one, I would go with Ian Machado Gary just because again, he's had a lot of stuff going on these last few months, and I just know that he's gonna come out a little bit, like I said, a little bit more motivated, and I see him getting it done. I do. And then once he gets that done, I see him going and immediately calling out Colby Covington. I mean, immediately. Like, as soon as he knocks out Jeff Neal or does whatever, however he gets the win, I see him immediately calling out Colby Covington and then putting himself in a position to fight either Kamaru or Hamzat. Let me rephrase that. Hamzat probably won't be fighting in the welterweight division, even though they've been trying to get him matched up with Leon Edwards for some strange reason. I could see him going and calling out a guy like Kamaru Usman after he gets it done and trying to set himself up for a title fight come International Fight Week. So we will see. But again, if I was a betting man on this one, I would definitely go with Ian Machado Gary. All right, and we are heading into the co-main event for UFC 298. Got number 3, Robert the Reaper Whitaker, Bobby Knuckles, former champ Bobby Knuckles, going up against Paulo, I need my secret juice, Costa, in the middleweight division. Currently, Robert Whitaker, which is a little bit strange to me, especially coming off of his last loss, is currently a minus 238 favorite. And Paulo Costa is currently a plus 195 dog. I think this line should be a lot closer than Vegas currently has it. But what I will say is Robert Whitaker this week has looked as locked in as he's ever looked. So, like, before the first Adesanya fight, he looked locked in, but it was a little bit shaky. That second Adesanya fight, he came in. That same look that was in his eyes the second time he fought Adesanya is the same look that I'm seeing this week. And some people, had him winning that fight against Adesanya the second time. So I see this going in very, very interestingly. Paulo Costa, the last time we saw Paulo Costa, it was August of 2022. He fought a aging, retiring Luke Rockhold and did not finish him. Now, you can do with that information whatever you would like, but he ain't fought since 2022. Last time he fought was against a guy who was on his way out of the sport, and he could not finish said guy. But he also should be motivated. There's a new champion in his division. Israel Adesanya is supposedly on vacation, so and he's fighting the number 3 guy. He gets, if he can get the number 3 guy Robert Whitaker out of there within those 15 minutes, it changes the conversation around Paulo Costa, right? So if he gets it done, first round KO, second round KO, any type of stoppage, whether it be first round or third round, it catapults him into that championship discussion with the Dricus du Plessis, with the Sean Stricklands, with the Israel Adesanya. And again, apparently, according to Israel, he's currently on vacation and ain't planning on coming back no time soon. So with the win against the number 3 guy for Paulo Costa, it throws him back into the title contention. And with a decisive win for Robert Whitaker, it immediately puts him in a rematch contention for the title against Dricus du Plessis, so he can prove that the first time they fought was a fluke. So I look at this fight in a couple different ways. I think that a rejuvenated Paulo Costa is dangerous. Strong guy, knockout power, and he's going to come at you, right? So I would say that Robert Whitaker in this position currently is probably, in my opinion, going to lose this fight, right? So you're coming off of a knockout loss against a guy that you said you underestimated, but I know for a fact that Robert was ready for that fight because Dricus was going to, it was a title contender. It was a title contention fight. So I know Robert was prepared for that. And coming off a knockout, fighting such a powerful dude and Paulo Costa, especially when he's off that secret juice, I see it going. If I was a betting man with the plus 195 on Paulo, I'm taking it all day long. You're rejuvenated, first fight back since 2022. If you can get out of the first 3 minutes of the first round and you're not hurt or you're not breathing heavy or if you can stay composed after those first 3 minutes, as much as I love Robert Whitaker, Bobby Knuckles is my guy. I just think that with the power and, like I said, just coming off of that knockout, man, I would go with Paulo. If I'm betting. I would go with Paulo. So co-main event, I say number 6, Paulo Costa will be taken out your number 3, Robert Whitaker, in position himself to call out a guy like Drickus, call out a guy like Sean, and get himself into title contention, and maybe to the point where he can possibly win the title before the end of 2024. Now, UFC 298, the card, the whole reason this card was even thought of, made, invented, whatever you want to call it. Your main event, the main event, Alexander the Great Volkanovski. The Great, the old man, going up against the challenger, number 3, Ilya Topuria. Now, this fight is an interesting one for so many reasons. I don't think I've ever heard somebody talk as much as Ilya has been talking since this fight has been announced. I mean, his girlfriend's been talking shit. He's been talking shit. He even went on his Instagram, went to his bio, and put 15-0 as if he had already beat Volk to become the champion. He's been on this little like weird, overconfident, arrogant press ring, which I like. It sells fights. And on the other hand, you got Alexander the Great, man who hasn't lost at featherweight ever, but he is coming off of a very, very tough loss to Islam Makhachev, the lightweight champion. Now in that fight, what I will say is we got to see a Volk that wasn't in camp, a Volk that was apparently fresh off of a childbirth, a Volk that was apparently drinking every day, and just not focused, going into that fight against Islam Makhachev. Now, leading up to that fight, he said the complete opposite of those things, but after the fight, we got to see that press conference of him going through the emotions of losing a fight that way. What I will say is, again, Volk ain't lost at featherweight. He's beaten, in my opinion, both of the top 3 featherweights of all time. When you look at Max Holloway and you look at Jose Aldo, he's beaten both of those guys. And this is probably his biggest test. That's what I will say. This is probably his biggest test. Ilya is a young bull, man, like a legit young bull, the type of guy that has the utmost confidence in himself. He is a real deal jiu-jitsu guy, and his boxing is the crispest thing I've seen. Right? So you got guys like Max Holloway, you got guys like Dustin Poirier that are just pure boxers that you make a mistake and you're in trouble. Ilya is the exact same way. The beating that he put on Josh Emmett was just rude. I mean, Josh couldn't touch him, and Ilya just could not keep his hands off of Josh. Every time Josh would throw a jab, Ilya would slip and just 3, 4, 5 punches, pop, 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 and all clean, and they all connected. And another thing about Ilya Topuria is his power. His power is very underrated, and he throws with a lot of power, but he's also very accurate. It's like pinpoint accuracy when he throws. So that's also another thing that Volk's going to have to look out for. What I will say about Volk, back on Volk, is that he is, when it comes to a game plan, City Kickboxing, when it comes to that whole team, Izzy, Volk, Dan Hooker, when it comes to those guys, as far as the game planning and the strategic fight style that they go into fights with, I just think that's where a guy like Ilya, who is so young, he has to be prepared for if Ilya's prediction is, oh, I go out there and I knock out Volk in round 1. But what happens when Volk isn't knocked out after round 1, right? Because one thing about Volkanovski, we've seen him in a bunch of horrible situations, and every single time he got right back out of it and ended up winning the fight. We watched it with Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega had that man dead to rights 3 times, and every single time, the moment Volk got out of the submission, he kicked his ass. I mean, got up raging and kicked his ass. Right? So I just think that that's where Volk has the upper hand. I know Ilya is saying, "Oh well, I don't have to respect Volkanovski as much because he doesn't have that much power coming back at me, or I don't have to respect Volk that much. He's older, so I don't know if he's coming off a knock." But one thing about it is Volkanovski he's not a pushover. He's never been a pushover, and it's not going to start on Saturday night. So my prediction currently, let me give you guys the line. I'm sorry. -125 for Vault as a favorite, and +105 dog for Ilya. Which they have that a lot closer than I have it. I know that Ilya being so young kind of gives him the edge when it comes to the Vegas and their betting. But me personally, if I had to bet on this fight, don't be an idiot. Don't be stupid. Go Alexander the Great. I mean, there's no reason for you not to. We thought Yair had the recipe. He beat the hell out of Yair. We thought Brian Ortega had the recipe. Besides those 3 very, very close submission attempts, Volkanovski kicked his ass. We thought Max Holloway had the recipe. 3 times, man. 3 times. 3 times Volk went to Max and kicked Max ass. You know what I mean? Okay. The second fight was a little bit closer, right? The second fight was definitely closer, and you could have scored it whichever way you wanted to score it for Max or Volk. But 1 and 3 were not close. And Max Holloway is considered, you know, before Volk became the GOAT in featherweight, was the GOAT. So I think that if you're gonna bet, don't be an idiot, and just bet on Alexander Volkanovski, because it just doesn't make sense for you not to bet on the guy. He does not lose fights. You know what I mean? Like I know that he just lost that last one, but he was up a weight class on 10 days notice. We saw what happened when he had the time to plan for Islam. So I think that if you were going to bet, do the right thing. Go ahead and take Alexander the Great to retain his champion and move forward. All right. So that is your UFC 298 card predictions. What I think is going to happen, how it's going to happen. What I will say before I move on to the next topic is this: Ilia Topuria, regardless win or lose, will be a force to reckon with in that featherweight division. That's just what it is. I mean, the guy's got power, and he's got the confidence, and he's got all the skills to be a champion. I just don't think that Saturday night will be his night. That's really it. But in the future, he will be the UFC featherweight champion. All right. So another thing that I kind of wanted to get into is this whole UFC 300 ordeal. Right now, the card looks good. The card looks pretty good. I can't lie. Really excited about that Max and Justin fight. I'm worried about Max, but nonetheless, I'm excited for that fight. You got the Weili Zhang and Yan Zhangnan fight. Also going to be a very good one. Oliveira and Sarukian is on that card. Prohashka's on that card. Aljamain Sterling's making his featherweight debut on that card. So the card is definitely shaping up to be a good one. When anytime you can start the main card, you know what I mean, with Davis and Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, just to start a card. You know what I mean? You can't really go wrong with that. You got Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison on the prelims. You know what I mean? So very, very good fights. Very good fights. Bobby Green is, which I did not know this, but Bobby Green is going to be fighting Jim Miller on UFC 300. I'm also looking forward to that. But the main conversation around UFC 300 right now is the decision on who will be in the main event. And I think that that's an interesting conversation because it's probably going to be the biggest event in UFC history. UFC 300 will be, and majority of your biggest champions and stars have fought or are going to fight before UFC 300, right? So Volk this weekend. It's one of your biggest guys, your biggest stars. He's going to be fighting this weekend. Who knows what type of injuries or what's going to happen in that fight? You had Leon Edwards just a few months ago take on Kobe Covington, and that went 5 rounds, so he didn't come out unscathed. So he probably won't be available, and if he is, the idea was him and Kamzat, or at least that's what I've been hearing, is Leon versus Hamzat, and Hamzat can't get into the United States, so that's not going to work. I know that he's saying, "Oh well, I'm not going to fight during Ramadan ever again," and all this. But I mean, fighters fight during Ramadan, bro, and he's had plenty of times to come to the U.S. and fight, but every time that he gets offered a card in the U.S., it just seems like he pulls out, or he's like, "Oh, I can't do it." So I'm pretty sure he's not allowed into the United States currently. Um, so that fight's probably going to fall through. Another rumor I've been hearing about UFC 300 main event is Leon versus Bilal Muhammad. Me personally, love that fight. It shouldn't be at the top of a UFC 300 card, right? Unless you think that Leon and Bilal going on last is going to help their star power in the long run. So you put them at the top of the billing so that at the end of the night on the greatest card of all time, you can have your quote unquote biggest stars. But I just don't think that'll translate. A lot of people don't like Bilal Muhammad. I love Bilal Muhammad. I think he's really good. I think he's funny. I think he's a good personality. But a lot of people don't feel that way about him. A lot of people do not like Rocky. They think that he's boring, So um, it's just interesting to see what direction they'll go. I saw where Dana and Hunter had reached out to John Jones about the UFC 300 card. John Jones is old, doesn't want to even risk it. I saw things where now this is the fight that makes the most sense to me, especially being that you want to end the card with the championship bout. I think it would be intelligent to put your best guys at the end, right? So your biggest and best guys. They always say that the heavyweight division in the UFC is supposed to be like the premier division, because they're the bigger guys, more knockouts, things of that nature. So I think that the direction that I would go if I was the one making that UFC 300 main event, I think I would probably put Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira. That's something that I've been hearing, and that's something that I would love to see. I think Tom Aspinall deserves it. I think after knocking out a guy that nobody in the heavyweight division wanted to fight, being sidelined right after that because John's hurt and Stipe don't want to fight, just doesn't make sense to me, especially when you earn your right to be called the interim heavyweight champion of the world. You should at least have the chance to unify that before another guy gets to fight for the belt, right? So I think the way to go, so you keep Tom Aspinall in the spotlight, and build his star, is to put him up against another international star in Alex Pereira, and having them duke it out for the main event of UFC 300 for the interim heavyweight champion. It gives Alex Pereira the ability to become a triple champ, a real live triple C. You know what I mean? And then it also gives Tom Aspinall the ability to have a quote unquote title defense. And not only a title defense, but you put him up against a guy who's a star. And if he can beat a guy like Alex Pereira, it just makes his star even brighter, So, and with John saying that Stipe fight is probably going to be his last fight, it was probably good that you build up a younger guy that can really lead that division moving forward. So my prediction for UFC 300, the main event of UFC 300, is they will end up landing on that Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira fight, and that's the one I want to see. I think it's one that fans would like to see. You're almost guaranteed a knockout with these two guys, so I just think that that's kind of the way to go, especially, you know, as much as I love Weili Zhang, because she's a firecracker. You know, Yan Jana, fire. Both of those ladies are firecrackers. I just think that it would be good to end off the night with Tom and Alex and a knockout. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, that's my opinions and ideas and thoughts on UFC 300. Um, with that being said, I'm going to go over a few more things, just two more things before we end this here podcast, the MMA mashup. I wanted to kind of get into UFC 299. We're going to speak about that a little bit. Not really going to give you my predictions, but we'll just have a very brief run over of the card and conversation about about that main event. So, and I'm only really going to focus on the main card until it gets a little bit closer, and then we'll actually talk about early prelims and things of that nature. Um, but looking at this UFC 299 card, can I just say, in the UFC, man, I mean, when they do pay-per-views, when they do cards, it's not people can complain about the prices, and listen, they are expensive. I'm not going to sit here and say that the pay-per-views for the UFC are cheap, because they're not. But man, they try to give you the most bang for your buck every single time you buy a pay-per-view. I mean, I'm looking at this card, dude, and there's every single one of these fights is a fight of the night contender, fight of the year contender. Like, you start off a card with a guy like Piotr Yan, which he has been having a rough go, but you start off a card with a guy like Piotr Yan versus Song Yadong. I mean, it don't get much better, and that's just to start off a card. Then after that, you got Gilbert Durinho Burns going up against Jack Della, and you know Jack is going to bring some fight. You know that's going to happen. You know that's a banger. And then you got Kevin Holland, who is a certified gangster. Every time he fights, you already know what's going to happen when he's out there. But you got Kevin Holland going up against Michael Venom Page, debuting MVP from Bellator, the guy who cracked Cyborg's skull. You know what I mean? So, like, another fight of the year contender. Two guys that you know are not going to go out there and play around. They're not going to point fight. You're going to get a scrap with those two. And then the co-main currently for 299 is Dustin Poirier taking on Benoit Saint Denis. Listen, I didn't think I'd see the day where Dustin Poirier will be doing favors for younger fighters. That just don't seem like his MO. But we got a good one. We got a banger. We got a fight of the year contender. You know what I mean? A fight of the night contender. Dustin Poirier, you know what he's coming to do, right? You know that he's not going to take a step back. He's going to pressure you. He's going to counter you. He's going to be in there for the boxing. You know he is. And then you got a guy like Benoit Saint Denis that's looking to kill you every single time. You know what I mean? He's not out there looking to point fight. He's not looking out at jab. He's looking to kill you every single time he throws a strike. So that's going to be a banger. And then the main event is a rematch. Sean O'Malley, Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vero 2. Now, I got a few opinions on this one. Um, I don't. I'm not going to go out of my way to say anything bad about Sean O'Malley. Won the title in his last bout against Aljamain Sterling via knockout. And he is looking to go through his first title defense against a guy who has already beaten him. So a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, well, Sean O'Malley is picking on a guy who's lower ranked and blah blah blah." But what I will say is, I salute Sean a little bit, just because, excuse me, just because Cheeto's already beaten him. not only beat him, but separated him from reality for a few minutes. So put him to the shadow realm for a few minutes. So for Sean to even, in his very first title defense to call out a guy. Now I will say there are a bunch of guys that are ranked above Cheeto that are probably stylistically a nightmare for Sean compared to Cheeto. But for him to go out of his way to call out a guy who's already beaten him once, I will give him a little bit of credit for that. Looking at Cheeto Vera, man, he is such an interesting case, right? Because as good as he is just as bad as he can be too, right? So you see him go out there against guys like Frankie Edgar and get controlled for 5 rounds and then pull something out of his ass and get it done, right? You see him go against guys and a critique on Cheeto his whole career has been he starts off so slow that he leaves himself literally no room to make up for it later in fights. You either knock him out or he doesn't get it done. So what I'm looking at when it comes to this fight is I want to see if Cheeto is actually going to come out and apply pressure, knowing that this is the biggest opportunity that he's probably going to have in his entire UFC career. Because if he loses this one, the belt, the road back to the belt isn't as easy as this one has been, right? Because if you look at his last few fights, he won one, and then he lost to Corey, and then he beat Pedro, and now he's in a title fight. So it's not like his resume has kind of earned him this title fight. It's more of a thing where he beat the champ. The champ doesn't really like the fact that he lost because give or take on that situation. But Sean kind of cherry picked Cheeto on this one. So, but we will see how that goes. We will definitely see how that goes. Mackenzie Dern is currently weighing in. Love to see that. Love Mackenzie Dern. See if she makes weight. Sorry about it. I just want to see if she makes weight. They doing a lot of moving with that scale. Uh oh. Uh oh. Ah, she made weight. Nice. I got worried there for a minute. They took a little bit longer than they usually do. She made weight. 116. Nice. So she will be there and she will get credited for a fight. Um, so this is the last topic um for today's MMA mashup, and that is um the fight night coming up after this card. So next weekend we've got a hell of a fight night. We've got Moreno versus Royval 2. So you got Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval in the main event, and you got Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega in the co-main. I'm not going to go that deep into the fight night card. I'm just going to give you my predictions on the main event and the co-main event, and then come around next weekend. We'll talk about a little bit more in depth as to why I think these things are going to happen and how I think these things are going to happen. But let's just talk about the co-main and main event and my prediction currently, because that could change by next weekend. You know what I mean? So the co-main, obviously, like I said, it's Yair Rodriguez coming off of a loss to Alexander Volkanovski, going up against Brian Ortega. Now, these two have fought before, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure the last time they fought, Brian Ortega ended up like separating his shoulder or something crazy like that, and that ended up ending the fight. I'm pretty sure that's their no contest. That's on both of their records. So it'll be an interesting fight to see. My early predictions for this one is Yair Rodriguez gets it done. I think that Brian Ortega, as good as he is, he tends to, and I mean this with all respect, because I'm not going in there in the octagon, but he tends to shy away when it comes to these big moments. He tends to get kind of small in those big moments. We saw it happen with Max Holloway. We saw it happen with Volk. Now I will say there was a few times where he almost pulled it out of the fire against Volk, but my early prediction for this one is Yair Rodriguez by knockout. Um, just so Yair is just so unorthodox, and Brian has a hard time against your classic boxers and strikers. I see him getting really lost in the shuffle out there against Yair with the movement and the unorthodox movements and strikes that Yair throws. Going on to this Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval, the main event for that UFC Fight Night card. Um, Brandon Moreno is such an interesting case, right? Because he's won the title. He's won the title a few times, right? Excuse me. He's won the title a few times, right? Um, and every time that he lost the belt, it was in very, 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 very close fashion. Like fight could have went either way. If you blink, it could have went to Moreno. If you blink, it could have went to Pantoja. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't have been wrong with either choice. Um, Brandon Royval coming off of a very, very hard fight against Pantoja, where he just looked like he was a fish out of water. I will say he looked like he had seen a ghost when he saw Pantoja coming at him. I think that he was just shocked by the cardio, the gas tank, and he what I just don't think he was ready for a 25-minute fight. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how he deals with another 5-round fight against a guy who is a credentialed champion who's been in multiple 25-minute fights. It'll be interesting. My early prediction on this one, obviously, the assassin, man, the baby assassin. You got to go with Brandon Moreno. Um, he's looking to get that title back, and I would love to see him go up against Pantoja for the third time. I know that Pantoja is currently up 2-0 on him, but that second fight, again, give or take, doesn't really matter who you pick. Could have been either one. So I want to see Brandon Moreno get through Brandon Royval and then go on and fight Pantoja again and possibly become a 3-time UFC flyweight champion. Right? Okay. So that is pretty much all of our topics for today. Thank you for coming to the MMA Mashup with yours truly, your host, Tony Robinson, and we will be back weekly. This will be a weekly thing. So I'm not completely sure when I'm gonna put this out. I'm probably gonna put it out either tonight or before the main card tomorrow. Not the main card. I'm sorry. Before the card tomorrow. And then I will figure out a schedule for what day to put this out, and so you guys will be kind of expecting, knowing when you're going to hear from me and when you're not. But again, thank you for coming to the very first edition of MMA Mashup. I'm your host, Tony Robinson. I hope to see you again. Leave a like, leave a comment, press the subscribe button, and if you really feel like being a great person today, just go ahead and hit the post notifications, man, so you know that when I'm coming out with these UFC predictions, man. I look forward to seeing y'all again. Thank you.